So let's talk about user stories and how you can use them to make your Power BI dashboards truly useful to those people that are going to read them. Now, unfortunately, many management information reports don't quite live up to expectation. Sometimes they're just too confusing. Other times they simply don't contain the answers that people really need. And we see this sometimes, that those carefully crafted reports end up being ignored, forgotten somewhere on a company intranet, while people go back to using their spreadsheets and their old habits. And that's a shame, because there's a lot of time poured into these reports, and to see that wasted doesn't seem right. So how do you stop that happening to you? And how can you guarantee that the people receiving your reports are going to carry on using them? Well, that's where user stories come in. So they're really simple, they're very effective, they're tried and tested, okay, and they can help you capture real requirements. So how do user stories work? Well, they're made up of three parts. There's the who, the what, and most importantly, the why. So the who identifies the person or the role that will be reading the report. The what identifies what they need to do with it. And the why explains why they need to do it. So let's take an example. As the finance director, that's part one, I need to see our liquidity over the next 24 months, part two, so that I can plan strategic borrowing so we don't run out of money. That's part three. Simple. Okay, but it does get to the heart of the matter. You know exactly what's needed and why. And if you compare that to, say, a typical requirement that we see sometimes, like the FD wants a cash flow overview, the user story is much more revealing. It gives context to what we're trying to achieve. So do try to follow that format. So as the personal role, I need the report or piece of data, and then so that I can action outcome. Following that format keeps things really simple, and it's very easy to implement. So now that really helps report developers because we can select appropriate data and use the right visual elements that, in this case, will help the FD plan borrowing and avoid running out of money. You understand what a successful report must do. And these only take a few minutes to write. You can see they're very simple, so they shouldn't take long, but you can save hours later on. Now, there's one tip actually, and when you're scoping or using these user stories, if you ask somebody, can you tell me why you need it in 10 seconds or less? Invariably, if people take a long time to tell you why they need something, it could be that they don't really need it. Generally, the reason behind something is fairly simple and concise. If you do get a long answer, either think, is this really necessary? Is this just a nice to have? Or do we need to break this down into a few user stories for different reasons? But it's a good test for how useful a particular feature or a particular piece of information in your report is. Okay, so as developers, that means that we can deliver value faster, and we have a success criteria to validate our work against, so that if we then go back, once we've created our report, we can then go through these user stories and check them, make sure that as the FD, I can see our cash flow position so that I can plan my long-term borrowing, make sure we don't run out of money. Does the report actually facilitate that? If not, go back, rework it. Report consumers get something that's genuinely useful, and you don't waste time doing the wrong things. It's a win-win.